So a huge thank you, as always, to our corporate partners and our partners who you can see on the screen right now. So we've got newcomers, BASF, welcome on board. Great to have you guys supporting us as ARC360. We've got BMS, we've got CAPS, we've got Copart, we've got Emacs, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and again, new corporate partners, Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes, as well as our partners, the Green Parts Specialists, and Indasa. So here we go. Welcome on board, Jordan, Sam, and Frixos, and again, welcome on board to everybody who's joined us thus far. Again, try and make this as interactive as possible as we can today. Bi-weekly we're on at the moment, so it's great to stay in touch with the industry and hear everybody's thoughts and opinions as we go. It's not just about these three people sat here and putting them in the hot seat, although that's what they volunteered to do, so that's very good of them. But it is about gauging opinion and insight from everybody. So three very different repair entities. As I said, Jordan Fisher, Managing Director of Axiom UK, and well, a relative newcomer to the UK market, and he'll give us a little bit more on that. So be interesting to see what's happened there in recent months and moving ahead, what the plans are. Sam Smith, multi-sites, 3 fixed auto sites currently, 1 under development, a brand new build, £1.5 million site, I believe, which is under construction at the moment. So Sam's got more than enough on his plate, I'm sure. And also Frixos Charalambos, of Managing Director of Exxon, and an independent vehicle manufacturer approved site in North London. So it'd be great to hear from Frixos and what his experience has been as well. So I shall come around to you guys individually. So if I may, Jordan, could you just give us a brief oversight in terms of yourself and Axiom UK?
Sure. Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, we're new to the UK market in terms of accident repair. We're quite an established company when it comes to PDR. So the brief, I'll try and keep it brief, the brief story of how Axiom came about. We used to travel the world a lot repairing hail damaged vehicles. That took us across to the States, it took us across to Australia and all over Europe. And we used to travel to a lot of events over in the States, and one of the guys that I've been heavily involved with for the last decade or so in the PDR world, a guy called Ryan Hampton, he joined forces with the ex-VP of ABRA over in the States, who decided to create what they call a hybrid body shop, which incorporated PDR into the repair process for every vehicle that comes through the door. So the idea is to reduce damage as much as possible. They developed that over the years and invited us to bring the concept over to the UK, which we did last year. We built out a new facility in Peterborough. And what we did, we tried to be as up to date, obviously, as possible with the build out, and we've installed CIMAC equipment to speed up the repair process in the cycle times. We obviously we emphasise everything on the PDR front as well, and we've gone ahead with the what we see as the latest and most comprehensive ADAS recalibration system. So yeah, we're based in Peterborough. We have got a vision to open up more sites, but the main objective for me is to get this site working as it's meant to be, and then we'll move forward from there.
Great stuff, and a lovely looking facility it is too, Jordan, and I think I'm owed a visit very shortly, so I look forward to coming down and seeing things there. Sam, across to yourself.
Yeah, so hello everyone. So I'm Sam Smith, and we have 3 fixed auto sites. Our company, TS Smiths, is probably running for just over 40 years now. It's just myself and my dad. And my dad's still involved, so it's a family business, and we really like to try and keep it that way because it just keeps it small and easier for us to run. It fits with our ethos. We've been working in fixed auto now for probably 13, 14 years. And we've got the 3 sites, and we're looking to hopefully open a 4th in Leeds later on this year. So being part of that fixed auto franchise group has been really good for us. especially in light of everything that's just happened. Having that support and having those people that you can dial into and talk to has been really, really useful. So we're just building on that, and we're trying to get our processes right so that we can expand into our new site and manage everything centrally within the group. So within just our, which will be 4 sites, manage everything centrally. So we still have that easy touch on each job to see where everything's going, because it's been a difficulty for us, I suppose, keeping it individual sites and keeping that close touch whilst expanding. So although it's taken us a while to get to this stage, we haven't waited to rush into an expansion and get overwhelmed with work. We feel we want to still keep the processes efficient, keep the process simple. So we still maintain all that good sort of family business ethos, whilst also working more like a corporate, I suppose, with Fixauto. And that balance has worked really well.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Sam. Look forward to hearing more about that. And you say hopefully opening a new site in Leeds. Well, let's certainly hope that's the case. It's been a bit of work. So and Frixos, over to you. If you can just give us a little insight into yourself and the business.
Yeah, sure. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm the managing director of Exxon. It's a small single-site accident repairer based in central London. Business is nearly 50 years old now, still in family ownership. Rather like Sam, it was started by my father all those years ago. I've been with the business 30 years and taken it from what it was back then as a kind of a general repairer doing servicing, MOTs and car sales to a focused specialist accident repair centre. VM approved, as Mark said, for the VW Audi brands. And yeah, we work exclusively with the retail public. We have no insurer approvals. We receive our work and get our inquiries by virtue of our presence online and through our affiliations with Audi and Volkswagen retailers in our local area. Some of you may be familiar with the model of implanted personnel that work inside dealerships, and that is the model that we use. So an employee of Exxon will work within the business of an Audi or a Volkswagen retailer. Traffic from that dealership will get steered towards our employee, and from there starts the transaction, if you like, whether it's a private repair or insurance and so on and so forth. And then that will then get booked into the main head office where the workshops are. So that's it in a nutshell, really.
Great stuff. All right, and we'll come back for plenty more detail on that soon, Frixos. So I just want to hop back to the polls, really, so to get people involved in what we're doing today. So again, anonymous voting, so we won't see who's voted for what, but if we can have some good, honest answers, that would be a good thing. So you'll see the poll come up on the screen now. So have you experienced a change in claims volumes over the past few weeks? And that's obviously very much been a core focus of these conversations during obviously lockdown and the pandemic. We're obviously moving the conversation on from that as we go, but it's good to just continue to gauge where we are in terms of anecdotally the industry and claims volumes out there. We'll give a couple of seconds for anyone who's not voted. Okay, and I'll share the results on the screen there. So slight increase, 50 or 49%, significant increase. That's always a good sign. Remain static, slight decrease again. So it's sort of highlighting, if you like, this sort of regional, what appears to be regional fluctuations taking place, and significant decrease, 3%. So let's do poll number 2. Launch polling. So how do you feel the Nationwide Accident Repairs Services acquisition is likely to impact on the industry / your business? And again, just a very much an opinion piece, this one. Obviously, extremely sorry to see the closures of sites and the redundancies that have taken place there, but again, a sort of new exciting chapter begins with Ready Northgate taking control of various entities or business aspects of the nationwide model. So again, just a few more seconds in terms of any votes. And again, let's end the polling. Let's share those results. Minimal, 39%, somewhat 37%, significant 16%, none 8%. Okay, so we will bear those in mind for the conversations. Poll number 3, and there are only 4, don't worry, we won't bore you with too many. So people and skills are again becoming front of mind within the sector as we look ahead, and it's a conversation myself and the panellists, when we met up earlier today, had around this. So have recent months changed how you view this area? You as a business, so have you developed completely new approaches? Are you now looking at things significantly different? You've made some positive changes, or were you already on the right path? And again, honesty is the best policy here. Again, we'll give people a few seconds just to up the responses, more coming in. Which is great stuff, by the way. And here we go. So, a few positive changes, 60%, already on the right path, 29%, that's always a good sign. And so, developed a completely new approach, 11%. So anyone, by the way, who's responding to these polls, please drop me an email afterwards, because I'd love to hear more about your responses, and if there is a completely new approach out there that we need to know about. It'd be great to air it on a webinar and or feature yourselves on a podcast, so do drop me a line. And finally, business interruption ruling. So earlier this week, yesterday in fact, I think the news broke that business interruption, the FCA had brought the test case in a bid to resolve the lack of clarity and uncertainty that existed, and it fell in favour of the FCA. Obviously an awful lot still to do and go behind the scenes, and it is just purely a test case. But how important do you feel this is at the moment? And again, we've had a little conversation about this as the panellists, so we may touch upon the subject. Few seconds there, and there we go, the responses are in. So very important, 20%, it's interesting, 71%, not very, 9%. So there we have it. Wonderful stuff. What do we take from all that then? Right, so let's get ourselves into gear then, and we will have a little sort of conversation. We obviously know in terms of each of the respective businesses there. So Jordan, you were kind of new to the UK market. Plans were obviously in place, but you knew it was going to be a bit of a rocky ride. You kind of didn't know it was going to be quite this rocky. So just give us a little bit of context. Again, I don't want to backtrack too far, but just a bit of context in terms of where the business sits right now.
Yeah, we opened our doors officially in January. And we saw a slower but steady increase of work, mainly from accident management companies. And this is why I was saying to you earlier, Mike, I do feel that we was in a good psychological position compared to what a more established accident repair company would have been in, because this year was expecting, like you say, a bumpy ride. We had our forecasts in place, but we weren't expecting to be, we weren't expecting them to be met with in certain circumstances, for good or bad. So when this hit, obviously we had to reforecast. We knew how long we could go without, without a flow of work coming through. I think, I don't know what everybody else was, but we were sort of predicting a 2-month massive disruption, and then easing back into it, which it has. Post lockdown, we did see an increase in work, so we hit June better than what we left off in March. So that was a positive sign. But we were dealing with a little bit of backlog from the fleet side of repairs. Yeah, and then I think from what I'm hearing from others that I'm speaking to, we followed the curve. We sort of had a bit of a lull after that, and now things have really ramped up again.
Good stuff. Great to hear. Yes, that's a nice summary of what's happened. And Sam, yourself again, just kind of a bit of context in terms of where things are currently with the business.
Yeah, well, I think there's probably no surprises in how our curve went. When it first happened, of course, we had no idea how long this was going to last. And I think that very first day, we had quite a lot of suppliers just shut up shop. So the work in the first week, it dropped by 80–85%. So we had almost everything cut down. We don't have a lot of work in progress in play at any one point, but that's how we like to have it anyway. So we probably only had about a week's worth of work going through the tube, so to speak, on the conveyor belt. So we couldn't make more work appear, of course. So we had to make sure that we could service the work we did have, and try and keep the business working as normally as we can. Because if everything's unplugged and gone, you're in a scenario you just don't really know how to cope with. So you've got to still be positive and look for the best. So that first week, I don't think I've ever been busier. I don't think I've ever been busier. We had certain people thinking, there's not as much work going on, and there wasn't. But we behind the scenes had to scramble to get whole new suppliers in place, because some people disappeared, some people were brilliant and they stayed on. Some new suppliers came along and they were fantastic, and we've carried on working with them. And then we had to put all sorts of little things in place as well, like we're going to go and pick up parts from certain locations and bring them in. We even had some dealers going even further afield, like Stockport. And I think even further, we had one at Lincoln once, bringing them back into Bradford, and then we picking up with our vans and then taking them to each site. So it was real, all hands on deck trying to think of all the solutions. And then our work volume sort of stayed about 30%. And then we had the Easter weekend, and it all collapsed again back down to just like a handful of jobs in the week. And we thought, what's happening now? But ever since that bank holiday Easter weekend, it's just slowly got busier and busier and busier. And the strange thing, when they first had the lockdown, where I actually live is in the Dales, and it's normally quite quiet. But as soon as lockdown happened, it's never been busier out here. People everywhere walking around. So it's just a really strange time to go through. So we re-established those new supply lines. We got everything up and running as best we can. We utilised obviously the furlough scheme where we could. We furloughed one of the sites. We centralised everything at that point, because the unique thing about this, and it's all a horrible thing, and you don't ever want it to happen, of course, but it enabled us to almost reset to zero, which is something we couldn't have done before. So we almost had nothing, and we were preparing to centralise our engineering and our claims. So we thought, well, this is the opportunity. We've got the new internet phone system. We're all on something called G Suite, so all the emails, everything's centralised. So let's do it. So we did do it, and it was really easy to implement because there weren't many calls coming in. So we got that up and running, and that's been a massive benefit for us now going forward, because doing that when you're really, really, really busy would have probably been really hard work. So it was just opportunity hitting preparation at the right time. So it's just luck, really, I suppose. And that worked really well, and we're benefiting from that now. And things have sort of been, the last 3 months have been back an average of 90%. So I think we're really lucky with that. I think that it is like you say, it's regional, that there are lots of places we talk to. I mean, by being part of Fix, that's been really good, because without that, and without having we had all the web calls where we could all meet up straight away and say, what's happening? How is it going with you? Sharing all that information has been brilliant. And then Fix did the thing, of course, where they were letting people know about what you could claim back, the grants and everything else. So again, that was another big lifeline, because all this information coming from everywhere, it's just bringing it into one place, and everybody around you is panicking a little bit. But you, if you're as you're leading the company, you want to try and bring all that together and go, be calm, it'll be fine, we'll find a way through. And we steadily have, and we've sort of come back to a version of normality.
It's great to hear, and brilliant that you've managed or navigated your way through it. You've seen the opportunity or made the most of it in a bizarre kind of way, and it almost sounds wrong to say that, but it's great to see that's what's been going on behind the scenes. And I think again, that community thing. That's one of the things that we've really benefited from with the webinars, is the sense that everyone's sort of felt a sense of belonging, and it's just helped people. You know, it can be a lonely old place out there as a business manager, and understanding other people's plight, I think, you know, certainly brings it home or puts it more into context. And so, Frixos, over to your good self. So where are you in terms of the current state of play?
Well, trying to get back to normal, like everybody else. If I cast my mind back to that period in March, and I think now, when was the Prime Minister's announcement? I think it was 23rd. Already the signs were there that, you know, supply was a little bit creaky, nervousness, customers withholding their bookings, not being so forthright with making arrangements. I think it was on everybody's mind that the lockdown was coming. In the end, the decision was pretty much taken away from us by virtue of the retailers that we work with said, we're closing. You know, we've taken the decision, we're shutting up, that's it. So with that, you know, you think to yourself, well, what are we staying open for? Then the announcement came from the Prime Minister, and that really kind of drove it home. That was it. You know, we're going to have to lock down. In the end, we stayed closed until the end of June, because all the time, one of the reasons to factor into, quite apart from getting the workshop and the offices COVID safe for a safe return to work, was obviously building up that pipeline of inquiries and bookings with which to justify a reopening. So obviously that was going on behind the scenes with our sales staff, whilst the rest of the business was still furloughed. That didn't happen until the 1st of July. So great order book to come back to work to. Surprisingly, it didn't take that long to, you know, eat our way into it. I mean, there were delays in authorizing repairs, for example. Insurance companies themselves were still finding their feet, trying to, you know, make do with fewer staff, fewer engineers, remote workers. So those authorizations weren't as timely as they would have been. But nevertheless, we had a good, better than expected July. August, not as good as July, and now into the kind of going into the third week in September. I've got to say, my experience is it's the level of inquiries. I don't know whether it's level of accidents, but they're not a sustained return to normal. You know, there's no clear line trajectory yet. So yeah, it's pretty much, you know, day to day survival.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff, Frixos. And you know, again, very, very different stories from three, you know, very different entities, if you like. So it's great to kind of, you know, get a grasp in terms of what everyone's faced. You know, again, I think generically people put a sweeping statement across a repair or a body shop and think everyone does kind of the same thing or relies on the same flow of work, whereas actually we're now sort of really drilling down into how it affects businesses independently. So what I want to come on to now is again moving the kind of the conversation on a little bit. We're all, you know, back to some form of normality. Sam, you sort of indicated that you took the opportunity to implement some new technologies and ways of doing things. And likewise, Jordan, you said previously when we were off air, you'd spoke about the staff who were in and kind of kept things ticking over for yourself. But, you know, what have we learned? Is the business now back different to how it might have been, to how it was kind of set out to be? Can you take that one for us, Jordan?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind on that front is is taking advantage of some of the schemes that have come into play, which, I mean, mainly for us is apprenticeship schemes, with us having a focus on growth, and the fact that we've got to a certain point now, we're trying to increase capacity. We're going to have to fill some gaps, and apprenticeships might just do that for us. And I think with the government announcement on the unemployment rate and the sort of the age groups that seems to be affecting most, I do think now is a time to get on board with one of these schemes, and we're putting together programs internally for us where we've actually gone a step behind the apprenticeships, and we've got two of our HR manager and our training manager. They've both enrolled on the STEM system, so along with School of Thought with Dave Rees. So they're trying to get into schools and start introducing people to the motor trade and showing people around the workshop. And then we'll start introducing more apprenticeships into the business. And obviously with the extra government funding or the grants behind it, and I think it's just now is a time for us to change into looking at younger people, getting them on board.
Has that always been a kind of core philosophy of the business? And, you know, even more so, is it kind of, you know, have your eyes been opened up to it with recent events in mind?
Well, I mean, young people, yes, because what we've brought to the body shop is it's not conventional equipment. So, you know, the spray booth, for example, using the Simac equipment, you could stick a painter that's been painting 20 years in there, and he's sort of back to square one. The fundamentals of painting's the same, but dealing with the speed of the curing and everything else, it's done differently. So, and as well with the way that we wanted to, we wanted to create hybrid staff. Now, easier said than done when, you know, we're compliant to BSI and everybody's got to have the qualifications in certain areas. But that's one thing that we're looking at doing, is training people up to qualification level between each part of the process. So yeah, there's a few things, but the focus was on, it wasn't, when we set up Axiom, everyone said to me that the area you're going to struggle with is staffing. And I always knew in the back of my mind that we had to staff to a certain level, but filling those gaps, we could open it up to a wider audience and do in-house training up to a certain level. So yeah, it's always been there.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Jordan. And Frixos, I'll come back to you on this one, because again, when we were off air earlier, you kind of, you know, we spoke of this. And in terms of your business, you know, the people, the skill sets that are now required, you know, that again, the conversations have gone back to these areas. Being a VW Group approved repairer, you really need your finger on the pulse in terms of all the technology that's on these vehicles.
Absolutely. I mean, the rate of new model introductions by the VW Audi brand is relentless, and it's fantastic. It is what marks them out as a successful brand. The point is that the whole after-sales network needs to keep up. And I mean, if we didn't have challenges before COVID, you can just imagine now. So, you know, Volkswagen has stated that it is one of those brands that is massively invested in the new electric vehicle technology, and that's the way it sees its future. So therefore, all repairers in the network, you know, are going to need to follow suit, and that's investment in training, equipment, facilities, and you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but you know, that's a challenge in itself, without the added challenge of COVID and the effects that's going to have on us all. So yeah, challenging and exciting at the same time, but we have to, I think, embrace that now and move away from the COVID debate, and we did touch on that earlier, and hopefully open up the discussion to all of our futures.
No, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right with that. And I'll stay on with yourself for a moment there, Fricks. I've touched on some really good subjects there, in terms of skill sets, technology that we're seeing, and again, it's kind of, that's not stopped. That's still been happening. Developments have still been taking place, despite the fact that everyone's sort of been distracted by obviously what's been going on in recent months. But and in terms of a business, that's one of the challenges you face moving ahead, is keeping up to speed with all of this progress. Is there anything that you've kind of learnt in the interim during the time that you were closed down about your business, alternative ways to do things, different ways to draw work into the business? You said you were obviously retail focused. Are there different ways that you've kind of thought, actually, that's something perhaps to either safeguard ourselves or increase the volume in the first place?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think we are going to have to get more savvy with e-commerce and look at how that can, augment the traditional routes into a vehicle ending up in our business. No, you're quite right. That is something that we've engaged with our retailers. We're having conversations with their marketing departments and to see what it is. I mean, it'll be familiar to everyone watching. I mean, how do you market accident repair? It's always been that tricky thing. Traditionally, the way dealers have tended to do it is through, paper-based items, whether it's a sticker on a sun visor or a business card or a leaflet or something that gets left in the driver pack. But clearly, these are things that they're outmoded now. They're certainly not in use by, the demographic that is now driving around in these vehicles. Generation Z, Generation Y. So yeah, we will have to move with the times, and another exciting challenge to take on.
Good stuff. That's it. That's the way to view it. Exciting challenges. We like that. Now, Sam, I'm going to come across to you again. So we touched upon it. You touched upon it. The fourth site, the first new build, I believe, amongst the Fix Auto network. I hope I'm correct in saying that. But give us a little bit of insight there. Couldn't have happened at a better time, could it?
Yeah, it's about how you frame things, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, I didn't know that as well. When Fix told us it was the first dedicated site that's ever been built from the ground up to be a Fix Auto site. It's off the back of, I don't know, Leeds is a bit of a strange place in terms of trying to get sites and volume. We originally went into Leeds in 2015, and we just took work we already had. We didn't have any new work in the area. So we just then built up work as we went along. We then needed to identify another site because it was getting just too full for what we'd prefer. It's like an 8,000 square foot site. We didn't really want to go too much bigger than that. We'd rather have another unit, another space. So getting somewhere in Leeds proved difficult. So we ended up having to rent somewhere in the interim, which is where we are now. We kept the original smaller site. We sort of mothballed that. And the original plan was to actually reopen that earlier this year alongside the rented site, and then move into the new Viaduct Road site, which is the new build that you're talking about. It was going to originally be summertime, and that was the plan. So really, other than being delayed for a few months, it's sort of worked out. And the reason it sort of took longer to find is property's a little bit harder to find. Well, it was for us anyway, harder to find in Leeds. You couldn't just go out and buy somewhere straight away. It was difficult. But now we've got what we think is going to be a really lovely location, a really nice location. It's quite good in that it's really central. I think the postcode, because obviously it's getting a new postcode, it's a whole new site. I think it's LS4, so it's quite central, but it's really easy to get to, which is different to Bradford. It's just quite an easy place to get to that particular site. So I think that'll work really, really well. So other than the delay of the few months, and I'm saying that hopefully it'll be November, until we get all the utilities signed off. We're never 100% certain, of course, but we'd like to be in there by the end of the year, and then we can move out of the rented place early next year. Well, this year and then get rid of that one completely. And then we'd also reopen our original Leeds site, hopefully next month. So we're good to go with that as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. And what are you doing anything, specifically new with the site? You're obviously heavily focused on process. I know you are getting things right and then sort of rolling them out. So just again, give us a little insight in terms of the new build. What does it give you the opportunity to do?
Yeah, so we sort of believe very much the process is key. So there are loads of lovely toys out there and lots of really good things you can get, and they're generally great tools. But without the process being right of how you repair that vehicle, it doesn't really matter what you've got. You have to have a really good process. And we are by no means have got the perfect process. It's a constantly evolving way of trying to do it. And it's interesting trying to do it as well as expand. So we're back to that thing of trying to keep control and keep it like a small family business, because there's a lot of benefits to that, but also deal with a bigger volume. And deal with that in a way that's quick and it's quality and it gives everybody the time. Because you find that when you have a smaller number we find anyway, a small number of live jobs at any one time, you get through them quicker. And as soon as there's like a tipping point where if you have too many vehicles in at once, it suddenly all slows down. It gets really unprofitable, it all collapses. And it's keeping that conveyor belt smooth that really fascinates me. And I just found it a really interesting thing. And I suppose the key new thing that we're probably doing in the Leeds area is our original Leeds site that we're reopening. We're going to reopen that as a heavier job site. So we know from our own stats over the last 20 years, so we've got lots of data, that we have about 10 to 15% of work that we would class as a heavier job. And we feel if we take all of that work and put it into one location, everywhere else should then speed up and go even quicker. Because the conveyor belt's freed up. It's like anything. If you've got what everybody will know, if you've got a really big job, you can tie up a panel guy for nearly a week or whatever, and it can be harder to do because you've got to focus a bit more and make sure you get the parts right at the start, get a proper strip. So if you have a site dedicated to just doing that, you should unlock the flow everywhere else. So again, it's just another way of looking at it to see if we can make the process quicker, make it quicker without causing any more stress. I think that's the key thing. You want to go faster, but you don't want to go faster and stress everybody out and make anything collapse. So it's getting that balance right. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Really interesting stuff. Again, it kind of touches on this segmentation theory that I suppose I work on. But again, three very different businesses sat here doing very different things. You're kind of now starting to divide up your actual work that you see coming through one operation. So really interesting stuff. So we'll jump back into kind of wider industry aspects now. So Jordan, I'll come to you on this at the moment. So just, general observations on the market right now. We've obviously seen kind of, the Nationwide, the Ready, the Northgate thing take place. We've seen the poll come through here. What have we got? 39% minimal impact, 37% somewhat of an impact on the industry. It's big news in the UK, obviously. But, have you kind of got half an eye on it? Does it present opportunities, threats to yourself? Are there other things that perhaps you're even more, focused on within the sector right now?
Yeah, I mean, our focus is growth, which, like I said before, we do have to focus on getting what we're building right first at this first site. So it does open up opportunities, especially when we're looking at future sites, because there's a portion of sites that weren't part of the sale that potentially could be available. But at the same time, we can't rush into anything. Nature will take its course on where we get to. We've got our number of site vision that we want in the future, but again, I'm not going to be held by that. We've got to see where we get to. Obviously, I feel terrible for the 500 plus staff that did get told that they weren't getting stupid across. The position they must be in at the moment must be horrific. So I do hope that they all do find somewhere and get placed within the marketplace somewhere. We're the same as Sam was just saying. It's funny you should say that, Sam, with the triage of work. We're looking at doing the same at this site here, and obviously we've got a very close site that was under the nationwide banner that's just come available within a stone's throw away from us, which people would say you're crazy opening a site 200 metres away from the first one. But we could be looking at it not in terms of growth across the country, but more in terms of sorting out our processes in here, because we're the same as Matt. We've got a whole fast track system. The full shop is fast track, but if you throw a commercial vehicle that can't be side loaded into a CIMAC booth into the mix, it destroys it. And the same with the heavy work. We've built our model knowing that, like Sam said, 90% of the repairs are, especially with ADAS, it's getting less and less non-structural repairs or smaller repairs. So we've built our model around that, and we even said when we set this up that we weren't even going to put a jig inside the place because we didn't want that excuse to take on that work. Obviously, we did put a jig. We had to change our plans to, we can't put our foot down because otherwise we'll get no work coming in. But and especially for BSI as well, we had to have that equipment in place to comply with that. But we want to move all that work out of here. And other body shops that have got the infrastructure in place, whether it just be airlines for now or the electronics built for a body shop, that would be appealing to us to take over an existing site as opposed to do what we did last time. And I'm sure you've had these headaches as well, Sam, but building from the ground up is always things that get in the way. And it's simple things like gas connections and things like that, So if we could take some of these redundant sites, then it will give us a few more opportunities.
God, Jordan, you should have spoken to Sam months ago. It's too late now telling him about the problems. So Sam, coming back to you again on the broader industry, the happenings out there at the moment. Is there anything that sort of piques your interest that again, do you think there'll be significant impact across the industry, or again, like the industry always does, we just evolve, it reshapes, and we reshuffle, and on we go?
I think a lot of things are going to start, inevitably things are going to start to go back to the normal they were before. Yes, we'll have a lot of the COVID effects in place, like the social distancing, and rightly so, and things that we do at work and spacing things out. I think that's the danger is we go back to exactly doing what we did before. I think we've got to pick on the things that have worked well, that are genuinely useful again going forward, and build on those new ideas. And it's funny, it's when it's all gone a little bit pear-shaped, it's made us rethink how we work. So, like we have to have video calls, we'd have to have, we couldn't go and meet up as often or at all, right at the start, of course. But then those video calls, just taking that as an example, what a great way for the management team to meet up across sites. Because even if you just had 2 sites, any sort of multiple sites, it's really hard for people to take them away from work, go meet somewhere else, and then drive back again. All that's gone. You can get that. You can box all that off. We have a review management meeting now that we try and have every month, and it's just easy to do. Everybody can dial it and then dial back out again. And as people get more comfortable with the technology, about sharing screens as well, you actually find it can sometimes be more productive. Now, I don't for a second think that will replace face-to-face meetings. You get something else with actually meeting people in person, but it's just another tool in the box, and it's a really useful one. And it'd be nice if people still use that going forward, even if COVID isn't the reason for using it. Actually, we're going to use it because it makes things a bit more efficient. We don't have to drive anywhere, and we can save a little bit more time. Let's not let the driver be something negative. Let's let the driver be something positive, that it actually helps us get things done. So I think the technology absolutely, and there's a lot of it out there, and a lot of it's either free or very, very low cost. So hopefully people continue to take advantage of that.
Great stuff. Now, Frixos, I'll come to you, and we'll touch upon the subject of the interruption case that's earlier in the week, because you kind of suggested that obviously with the position of your business, it might be something that is relevant to yourself, really. So, what are kind of your thoughts on there? And I'm sure there's many other body shops in the same position as yourself who are kind of at the moment thinking, what does it kind of mean? Is it something for me? So, what's your take on that?
Well, I would say yes. I would encourage everybody to start a conversation, if you're not discussing it already, with your insurance brokers. Unknowingly, even you may even have an extension on your motor trade policy, which entitles you to cover for this, precisely this type of incident. I mean, if you take the time to read into the ruling, which, by no means, I don't think anyone's got a definitive interpretation yet. That's going to take time for the industry to disseminate. But I understand that a certain number of insurers will find that the ruling doesn't apply to them. Others it does. And of course, businesses likewise, policyholders. So it pays to have those conversations and to see. For example, in our direct case is where a situation where a third party's work provider had closed down. We were then unable to send our representative to work at that location, in that business. And ergo, the work dries up for us back at the workshop. So that's the question. Obviously, different scenarios for different businesses, but it's still worth asking the question, I think.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, as we said, I think is it a 162 page document, I think I read earlier. So it's it's quite a heavy document to get stuck into, and I think there's an awfully long way to go with all of this. But it was a test case, and it sort of ruled in favour of terminology and things at the moment. So, certainly something that obviously you'll be keeping a close eye on, and others. Just wondered if there's anyone out there who's got any questions for the panelists. Feel free to fire them our way. We've got plenty to still talk about, that's for sure. But if anyone's got anything that they urgent or keen to ask the panelists, then please do. Again, similar repairers I know tuning in today, and we'll all have similar challenges and opportunities that they face. So feel free to fire away. So in terms of the Q4, let's kind of whittle it down, if you like, in there, and the focus really for Q4 for yourselves, and in terms of your kind of thoughts on in terms of where that might go, whether it be your volume, whether it be the return back to dealer sales or dealership work. Where do you think it's heading, Jordan, at the moment? And again, it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string, kind of who's got the crystal ball effect. But as things stand currently here today, what's your take?
I mean, yeah, and even more so for us because we've got no comparison to previous years, with this being our first year. But again, focus on our own processes. We're expecting an uplift in work. So where we found ourselves to where we're due to be, we've got to manage that extra work and see how our processes cope with it. And that's it. Repair as many cars as possible in the fastest time possible, but with an eye on we tend not to look elsewhere. I prefer to have friends in the industry as opposed to looking what Joe Bloggs is doing down the road. So we're not comparing ourselves. We're just focused on our own increase of work and making sure we can cope with it and making sure we're doing our best for the customers and work providers. I'm expecting a busy quarter, that's for sure. And hopefully by the end of it, we'll be where we're expecting more turbulence as well. We're dealing with work that might not necessarily be with us in the future. It might be, a knock-on effect from the disruption we're seeing in the market now. So we've got to keep that in the back of our minds, but we'll use that work to make sure that our systems work.
Yeah, and again, it's sort of I suppose a great opportunity to stress test and engage.
Off. So yeah, we're not comparing to anything. We're just focusing on what we're doing at the moment.
Good work. And Sam, you've obviously got theoretically, I say theoretically, but an exciting time in the next few months in terms of sites opening and stuff, and that's again, what's your kind of Q4 projections, if you like, for the business?
Well, I think going forward into Q4, I think for us we are going to get busier. I think the nationwide events obviously moving a lot of work around, and I think you're right. It's an absolutely horrific thing for the staff, but I'm hoping that, I mean, we've already picked some people up. I'm hoping that because the capacity to do it is now probably less, the volume is still there, that all these people, and Nationwide have had some fantastic staff working for them. So I really think there's a good opportunity there. They're all going to get positions around in other places, and so they should. So I think a lot of work's going to move about. I think where we are is with Fix have always had some really good, strong, positive insurer relationships, and that's going to see us get a little bit busier with where we are, with just a look to making sure we balance out the work, so we can deal with it properly. So I think it's a bit of luck that we happen to have the new site coming online and then another site also in Leeds, so we can then feed this volume into the capacity we've got. And so for us, it's just further refinement of that process. So we've come so far with doing our process, but there's so much more we can do. It's almost like you do a little bit more, then you unlock something else, and you can get that bit further and get that bit more out of everything. It's just touching back on just the apprenticeship thing we were talking about earlier. I think training's a massive issue. I think there's a possibility to get some really good staff, but we have to start looking more to our own and growing our own, rather than hoping that people just fall in. Yes, the Nationwide event, there's going to be some people there, but that's not going to be there forever. These people are going to get picked up because they're greatly skilled and they're going to find places to go. But we still have that issue going forward next year and the year after that. And I think the key for us, that I think will help us, is having an active training program in place for all of our staff. So even people that are really experienced, so that they feel they can develop. Because I think you can use training as a way of motivating people. I think if everybody's got something new they can learn, something new they can do, it brings them along. We've had some fantastic apprentices recently that within a space of just 18 months are doing some really good panel work, really, really good paint work. So I really see us being able to accelerate that in the right way. So we're not rushing any training, we're doing it correctly, but having more of a focus on the training rather than having to go out there into the jobs market and just look for somebody new. Let's have a little bit more of a bit more nuanced development of our own staff, our own team.
It's a really interesting thoughts. And do you think, do you think it's kind of potentially one of the things to have stemmed from this is the fact that, again, with apprentices in mind, potentially again with the sort of disruption we've faced, but are we now thinking about creating far more career path type opportunities for people rather than here's a job, this is what we'll do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. I think now when you look at what a tech can earn, it's a really good sum of money. And I think in the past, anything that's been more our industry, our trade, has almost been looked down on a little bit in schools. You're not a doctor, you're not doing anything that you're not being an astrophysicist. But it's lost that little bit of credibility. But that's just not true. It's a fantastic job. It's great for developing who you are and developing new skills. You can get paid really well, and it's a really good job with lots of longevity in it. The skills are needed. There is definitely a skill shortage. You will always be needed somewhere. And these people tend to be really adaptable. So I think we have to have a much better, and this is just us as a company, a much better link into local colleges and schools so we can pick up on those interested, really keen individuals. So we don't want to be picking up an apprentice that has just come to us because they couldn't do something else. We want to pick up an apprentice that really is interested in what we're doing and really wants to do the job and is really keen. And from that motivation, I've just seen the growth in individuals and how quickly they learn and how quickly they can be brought on. And I'm thinking, plus they're younger, plus they're starting from scratch, so you can mould them into that positive mindset, and they can learn off the people that have been there longer. And you find the people that have been there longer that are teaching them, it sort of rejuvenates them as well. They get a renewed interest in what they're doing. So again, it's just a change in process in how we do it. I don't think there's a great cost there. There's just some time and just some thought. But that is something we definitely have to do as a business, and I think that'll benefit people.
Really interesting stuff. And I can see a conversation between yourself and Jordan coming on, certainly with the STEM activity that's taken place there. So that'll be a good conversation to have. And Frixos, all of that essentially plays into your hands in terms of aligning closer with vehicle manufacturers. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. What hasn't been discussed and what's interesting is the whole concept of vehicle ownership and how that's going to play out in the years to come. I mean, we've already seen, PCP. People don't own their cars in the way that they used to, and to use a term what is their skin in the game, so to speak? What is their own investment in the vehicle when they can just, I don't know, pay a monthly subscription almost? It's become a commoditized asset, if you like. So that feeds into the debate from the point of view of, how discerning will customers be in the future? How much pride will owners take in, the standard of their vehicle and the standard of their repair, and will they want to seek out these high quality repairers and VM repairers? I would like to think yes, but it's difficult to say. I mean, my own experience in retail tells me that, if you're not priced at that point, at that kind of transactional point, the customer will walk. And I don't know if that's, Sam, Jordan, that's something that you guys experience in your businesses, if you're, insurance referred work, but that's my experience.
Well, you've probably teed us up beautifully for another webinar there, where we can talk all day about vehicle ownership and where that will end up. So that leads us beautifully to the end of today's webinar, in fact. So as I say, we will pick up on that one, because it'd be great to have your input on that as well. And I know there's certainly a lot of opinion in terms of yes, who owns the vehicle ultimately, and responsibilities and all the rest of it, and where that lies. And it's definitely a changing world that we live in terms of that. So great points made there. So a huge thank you to Jordan and Sam and Frixos for your input today. It's been a fascinating discussion. I could have stayed here all afternoon, but I suppose we should go and do some work, really. Big thank you to everybody who's joined us. Again, a very quiet audience. They're obviously so enthralled and listening to what you guys are saying that they didn't say anything else. It's been great to hear from you. Thank you very much for everyone who's joined us. So we are back on 2 weeks' time, 30th of September. Again, if anyone specifically wants to take part in a webinar and join me on a podcast, watch out for those, because they're alternating every other week with the webinars. Then do just drop me a line. It'd be great to speak to as many people as possible. We've got an event coming up, in theory, on the Tuesday, the 24th of November at the British Motor Museum. You will hear many more details about that. Please take time to join our LinkedIn channel, and hopefully we'll have a website live in the next couple of weeks, ARC360 website, and also keep a lookout for the I Love Claims Tech event, which is coming up and is a digital special. So a huge thank you once again to our corporate partners: BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emacs, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes, and our partners, the Green Parts Specialists in DARSA and the Innovation Group. Thank you very much once again for joining us, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.